Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Law of Attraction Radio Network. And of course, I am Constance Arnold. Well, I have a great show for you. We're going to be talking about how to reboot your life, how to reinvent your life, how to take the negative things that have happened to you and really begin to create the life that you desire. I have a great guest for you. You're going to be really blessed and challenged, inspired, and motivated by my guest tonight. My guest tonight is Dianne Bischoff James, and she is an actor, author, and an entrepreneur, and she just loves helping others recognize and connect with their own personal power and potential. She is a dynamic motivational speaker. I know that because I heard her at the conference in Palm Springs, California, and I was very moved by her. She's a charismatic broadcast personality, and she is an acclaimed performer who encourages audience to create a reality that is prosperous, deliberate, and meaningful, and I know all of you desire to do that. She is the author of The Real Brass Ring: Secrets of a Midlife Reboot. And maybe you're not in midlife. Maybe you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, I don't know. You know, age is just a number. But man, this show is really going to teach you how to reboot your life, how to reinvent your life. And I am so excited about it. So Dianne, welcome to the Law of Attraction Radio Network.
Oh, thank you so much, Constance. I am so happy to be here.
Well, you know, it was such a joy connecting with you at the conference. And how can I say this? I was very moved by you. You were very prepared. Your presentation was so powerful. It was principle centered, and I felt I wanted you on the show today because it really gave people a lot of hope.
Oh, thank you so much. It was delightful to be there, and I am a huge fan. So I was actually honored to be with you and be on stage with you. So thank you so much.
So what great city are you calling from?
I'm in Chicago.
Chicago, that's where my niece is, and she keeps saying, Aunt Constance, you've got to come and visit me. You are too busy. So if she's listening to this show, I'm coming, baby. So she just loves that city. So tell our listeners just a little bit about you, and then I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, and I'm not going to even interrupt you, which is a big deal for me. My listeners will tell you because your story is so inspirational and intriguing.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, my story started several years ago, and actually it was in early midlife. I was 38 years old, and I consider myself to be a good soldier. I had followed all of the rules, all of the instructions that I had been given growing up. Came from a very traditional family. Father was ex-military, and we had been told a few things. When you grow up, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or an engineer. And actually, none of those fit me perfectly well. I didn't really do well at numbers. I wasn't crazy about hanging out in hospitals, didn't want to get into arguing for a living. So I decided to do the next best thing, and I went to business school, and I learned about marketing, and I kind of geared a marketing business towards engineers. And so I had a very, very successful practice of marketing, and I was a marketing brand consultant, won all kinds of awards. I was told as one of my programmed messages that I had to get married by a certain time. So about 29, I was told I had till 30. So at 29, I got married, followed all these instructions, and I went after the ring and the bling. I had a successful business. I had a little Prada bag, and I had the Gucci shoes, and I also was able to do so well that I kind of got a mini mansion, and I had a lot of the possessions that I thought that I wanted. But on my 38th birthday, I decided to go and get a special present for myself, and I went to see Sonia Choquette. She's an internationally known psychic.
Right.
And
I've had her on my show. She's very accurate and very powerful.
She is. I had no idea what to expect. I just had multiple people say you should go see her. So I kind of put those dots together. So for me, I had no idea what to expect. I thought Sonia was going to tell me that I was the cat's meow, that I was just all that. And sat down at the time she was having readings in her home, sat down in her home, and she started this reading by telling me that I had 100% missed the brass ring, that I was off track. I was living somebody else's life, the life my parents had prescribed for me. She told me that nothing about my life was authentic or real, and that I had to hurry up and move it or lose it, or I was going to miss this opportunity. And I didn't know what to do, Constance. I was actually freaking out. I kind of sat there completely in post-traumatic shock. 30 minutes after my session with her, I was still crying in my car. And I didn't know what to do. I measured myself up, and I basically, according to her, got a big fat 0. And I was shocked. I was shocked and freaked out. And she said at the time that I was supposed to be this writer, a teacher, healer, and that I would do well on stage. Well, I'd always had an interest in acting, and I put that in the little box where my father told me to put it, away in the closet, and I had not pursued it since college. And I really didn't know what to do. I was overwhelmed, absolutely overwhelmed, and stunned and just frozen. And after she did this undressing, where she completely took everything off in my entire life and said my husband was more like a girlfriend, we didn't have a heart connection, that I had the wrong business. She said I had no friends. And I had children at the time. I had a couple of children at the time. And she told me that I wasn't even parenting right, that I was, too much of a helicopter parent, and I really needed to give them more self-determinism, et cetera. So I decided at that point to fix everything, and I took her instructions. I read a bunch of books, but in the meantime, she didn't tell her I'd already read about 200 metaphysical books, and I read now 210. She told me to read 10 more, so I did. And I decided to pursue the law of attraction. I found Esther and Jerry Hicks and just felt moved by them. They really came up with the basic principle, I think, of law of attraction, which is what you think about, you bring about. And unfortunately, I had all stinking terrible thinking at the time. I never really thought good things about myself. I was also about 190 pounds, and I realized that everything Sonia had said was true, in addition to the fact that I was chronically and critically depressed. And all the depression tied in with being overweight, which tied in with the fact that I didn't have a heartfelt relationship, and I was just programmed. So I got on a mission, and I said, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what the journey looks like or how much I have to invest in this. I'm going to fix every aspect of my life. And that's what I did. So I call myself a midlife reinventionist, and I basically went and fixed the inside. My heart was broken, as I call it. I didn't feel that I was authentically me, but most importantly, I didn't love myself. And I knew that unless I fixed the inside first, I wasn't going to be able to move forward. So I marched myself off to a place called Hoffman Institute, and it's in California, just north of San Francisco. And Sonia, of course, had told me to do this, so I followed her instructions. And for a week, I was able to go through an emotional reboot. They basically break down everything that's not authentic, put you back together, give you a big hug, and I came back feeling awesome for the first time in my life. And I was 40 years old, and I realized I didn't want to raise children if I didn't love myself, because if they saw a mother who didn't love themselves, how were they going to ever grow up and be healthy, happy, functioning children? So I came back from Hoffman, and miraculously, the weight started falling off because I didn't need to stuff my face with Twinkies and Ho-Hos and Chips Ahoy anymore. I just felt better about myself. I had a full heart for the first time, and I decided to pursue acting at 40 plus. And I marched myself over to a community theater audition, relatively unprepared. I didn't know what was going on. But I decided I was going to show up anyway. And it was on my birthday, and I figured this was my birthday present to myself. I'm just going to show up. And I was still, pretty big girl at the time, but I decided I'd kind of cover it all up, hide myself with a big skirt, big boots, and just audition my little heart out, and that's what I did. And then I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited for that phone call, hoping and praying that I would get a role with a line. And after about 7 days, I got a phone call actually from the director, and she said, we'd like to offer you a role. And I was speechless. It was one of the best days of my life. She said, we'd like to offer you the role of townsperson 1. And I said, I'll take it. To me, that was my first Academy Award and probably my last, but for me, it was everything. And I just, from that day forward, I started pursuing everything that was truly from the heart, everything that I love to do. And I managed over the next 10 years, it took me 10 years to reboot. But as a reinventionist, I became an actor. I'm now a SAG actor.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy about it. It's something that I've worked hard for, and I'm actually going to go film a web series tomorrow, and I just have another, so I have, it just comes in effortlessly. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing for me. I lost 55 pounds, and I have not gained 1 pound back in the last 10 years, so I'm eternally grateful for that. Wrestling a battle of a lifetime and a bit of an addiction for myself. I changed my relationship. We ended the marriage amicably, and the children are happy and perfect and great grades, and the whole thing ended up to be a really positive experience, I think, for everyone. I have a new relationship. I'm engaged right now to a nice man that I think you probably met
him.
One of my biggest supporters, and I don't know what to do without him. And I have also wrote a book. She told me to write a book, and I kept sitting down trying to write a marketing book and write about marketing processes and branding. And every time I sat down, I just started pouring from a soul level. I started pouring these words out, and it was all about my story. I wasn't able to write a marketing book because my fingers kept doing something else. And so I put a book together called The Real Brass Ring, and I started a new business called Live Your Everything. It's an online business, liveyoureverything.com. And what I wanted to do is create a sanctuary for midlife transformation. So it has products, resources, recommendations, books. I have these rules that I put together, 14 rules for living well. And it has all the rules in there and just ways that people can reboot themselves any year. It doesn't have to be midlife on 40 plus. It could also be 20 where you start out and do it the right way first, or 30 where you're just in the middle, usually your career years, or if you want to actually just reboot in your senior years. I think it's all about a re-architecture of your life so that it is from the cellular core level of heart and soul. And that's what I hope to be able to create a whole movement, Constance. That's my goal, is to create a movement for midlife transformation, United States and beyond, so that everybody is just that little bit happier with their day, happier with their life.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these shortcuts for happy living. I mean, now you're living an extraordinary life. The blessings are coming in. Your good is coming in. Before we started the recording, you said you had so much going on. It's just an overflow. And you have 14 principles, and we won't be able to get to them all. But I know my listeners, so I'm going to ask you about some of them. So let's talk about what you think about you bring about.
Right. That to me is the core. That is the fundamental rule that I'm not sure in my generation we really understood, but everything you think about, talk about, and pay attention to is coming your way. So make it good. And the important part about that, which I did not understand for many, many years, is everything you ask for, the answer is yes. And the trick is that it's already in development when you ask. It's just how you line yourself up with it. What have you done on your part? What have you done on all these different planes of existence to make it real? And I guess when I used to ask for things, I always thought the answer was going to be no. And so it was a real shift in consciousness for me to remember. I even have a little wish box, and this works really well for me as a little tip. And it's really pretty and it's beautiful. And I write down things that I want. and I know the answer is yes. I put it inside this box. I close that lid, and I know once I put it in there, it's going to be mine in the future at some point. And then I can just release and let it go. And I let the universe do their part. And so those are the kind of tips that I use, or little tricks that I use to help me get what I want. One of the things that's kind of funny, because I use these rules all the time. In fact, I use them in daily life, is that sometimes I'm at the point where abundance is coming in at such a high level. It's be careful what you ask for. You actually might get it, and then what are you going to do? So I'm kind of in that space right now where everything's turning out beautifully. The money is flowing, and the acting career is flowing, and the book is doing well, and the public speaking is flowing. And now I'm in the little trick of trying to catch up with everything and put it all together in a formula that works for me, so that I don't feel overwhelmed. It just feels joyful, right, and not just too much. So that's one of the rules. One of the other ones I think that's a really big one is about managing your wave. That's rule number 5. And the principle of the rule goes something like this, that if you create harmony and synergy by focusing on the positive side of your wave, and the truth is that everything in this universe is in the form of a wave, in particular a sine wave. And there's 2 ends of that wave. The positive side of that wave and the negative side of that wave. And I was chronic in my past at grabbing at the negative side of the wave, because I had been programmed as a kid to think that everything for some reason was always going to be bad. If you go outside, it was like, well, be careful, or be safe, or, hope your trip's okay, or be sure to eat all your food, because you don't know when you're going to get your next meal. So I think I had learned to be cautious and afraid. I didn't learn to be confident and comfortable and happy and seeking greatness and goodness. I learned the other aspects. So what I do now is I actually think of, in every situation, there's one thought that will make you feel better. So, for example, if I have to do something that I don't really want to do, and there's a lot of work still. I still work in my marketing business, and sometimes I just don't want to sit down and write down all the information for that website. So I think to myself, okay, what's the one thought that's going to make me feel better? And the one soothing thought I have is, when I'm done, I get to watch my indulgent TV show. So I set myself up with a little positive reinforcement. I say, okay, you can do this in an hour. So I think positively. I think about how easy the steps are to get the work done that I'm not particularly wanting to do at that moment. And then I think, oh my goodness, I get to run out and watch Revenge when this is over. And strangely, just thinking about that little positive upside really shifts me. It shifts me in a positive way. So I put my boots in the right direction. I sit myself down in my chair, and the minute I put my hands on the keys, it's just a little easier, and it does go a little faster.
It does.
So I'm very big about always looking for that really, really positive thought.
Let's talk about choose the end to your story, because I think that many listeners today, I think that your story is so important. What do you say to yourself, your beliefs? So why is that important, choosing the end of your story?
Well, as an actor, that's a really fun question to answer because as an actor, every single solitary script that I go to look at could actually change the end of the story. The funny thing is, a lot of scripts, just so that you know, when you do film, sometimes they actually film 2 or 3 different endings. And then they decide at the very end whether they wanted the suspenseful one, the happy one, or the sad one. So I started thinking about it from an acting perspective, and I started imagining what the end of my story would look like. And for me, I see myself in a very beautiful place, like a nice condo. And this is the end of my story, where I'm in my super senior years, let's say late 90s. And I say to myself, and I always want to go for some cute male orderly who's taking care of me. And he says to me, so tell me about your life. And what I am able to do in that part of the story is I rattle off everything that I have completed that this person probably has no idea, that was just phenomenally satisfying to me. I'll say I jumped out of an airplane. I learned how to ski at at 50, which I just started skiing a couple years ago. I wrote 3 books. I traveled. I was able to converse and help other people, whatever that story might be. And of course you end it with, and of course I ended up with the love of my life. And just being able to craft that story with such a nice spin and that beautiful positive ending, it gave me a lot of energy and a lot of drive towards making each and every one of those aspects a reality.
I can see that. So Dianne, did you utilize visualization techniques while you were going through your process?
Oh, absolutely. I'm huge at visualizing. I like to imagine, and this is, again, sometimes I like to give tips for people who get a little stuck. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I get stuck, again, on things that, and I've noticed for myself, this is just my pattern, but I think many years ago, even like as recently as like 4 or 5 years ago, I had a great fear. The book was almost done, and I had a great fear of, I'm not sure if it was a fear of success or fear of failure, but either way, it's kind of the same stick. Either you're going to fail because you didn't do something, or you're going to succeed, and then, oh my goodness, what if people don't like the message, etc. And I think the fear of failure and the fear of success were combining in such a big way that I wasn't able to finish the book. And I was very stuck. And so I started using visualization to move past that. So I imagined myself putting something out there and actually walking through it. So I finished the book. I visualized the fact that I wanted to get a publisher. And the first thought is, oh, everyone's going to say no. And then I imagined myself kind of sending it out and someone calling me and saying, I think your book's great. And I kind of walk through it. I actually see myself walking through the situation, like my little feet walking through. Mm-hmm. Then I turn around and I look at it from a different side. And they said, no, I'm sorry, we don't care for that. We're going to pass. And then I walk through that. And then I turn my feet around again and I go, here's another party. The other party says, well, it's really interesting. We want to think about it. And I walk through that. And then I try to take the actual visualization and use it kind of in a way, kinesthetically using your mind to kind of disassemble it and to break it down so it becomes very airy and very light and eventually kind of disappears. And once I got over the fact that I could have massive rejection as a possibility, it became really easy to put the first letter out there saying, would you please review this book? And the truth is I did get rejection. I think I got rejected by about 15 different publishers, but of course there's always that one call. The one call is that 16th call where somebody does say yes and they were willing to be my partner in this journey. And that's the part that you don't know. The path is jagged, the path is not straight, Constance. And that's
so
a message
true.
It's so jagged. You don't know when you jag to the right, you're going to end up going totally to the left and then you go back to the right. So you don't know how those pieces are going to fit together. And so I use a lot of visualization to overcome anything that seems to be an obstacle for me.
Well, you mentioned earlier that when you were married, that you had a lot of money. You lived in a mini mansion, Gucci, Versace, Prada. You had all of the things. So what's the difference now? Because now you do have success and wealth and love. What would be the difference for people who are listening tonight? And how can people begin to attract love and more money into their lives? Those are the two questions that I get from people all over the world all of the time, Dianne.
Well, and I totally think that you're on to such a huge topic right there. I feel like our society in particular, at least in the States, that we are very geared towards reaching towards all the ring and the bling, that somehow all of those material possessions are going to you're going to find great happiness. But the truth is that as soon as you buy a new car, I give it about a week before it's got a scratch on the door, having been in a parking lot. Or the minute you buy, the big house, you don't look at the other side of it before you buy it because you're in such splendor and joy with the honeymoon that someone's got to pay for that house and not pay for that house today. We're talking tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So I became very, very, very realistic about material possessions, and I decided to keep my nut really small, at least for now. I find that the pressure that was there to keep all those big trips going and all the designer clothes and all the latest and greatest on the electronics, it did not make me a happy person. In fact, it stressed me out terribly. So I now we went through the swing like everybody else. There was that horrible time during 08 and 09 where most of this country, I call it the great equalizer. I think it brought everybody down to the same level in that we all were tight. We were all stressed out. Nobody knew when this recession was going to end. And we all had to really look and bring everything a little closer to the vest. And that was a great experience for me because I don't think I spent anything for about 2 years. If it wasn't at Target, I wasn't going to buy it. So I figured Target, I only wish I would have invested in Target because everybody was finding that, the $5 handbag is just as good as the $500 handbag. It just all depends on how you carry it. So I really got very, very, very clear that it's not about the wealth and possessions for me personally. I like to have a couple of cute, nice things. And other than that, I really go for experientially what makes me happy. So I really moved away from all the possessions. So that was the first question.
And what about attracting love? Were you praying for love? I mean, after your marriage, and I think I remember reading that it was a codependent relationship and you healed from that. Did you desire genuine love? What did that process look like in your life?
Well, for me, there's a lot of stories in the book, and I think a lot of the readers seem to like my dating stories most of all. As always, when you're dating and midlife and trying to reinvent yourself, there's a lot of roads that you have to go down to try to find new partnerships, new relationships. And I went down every single road that there was. I experimented with online dating. I went through traditional channels where people were fixing me up. I went and just discovered everything I could about being single. And the truth is, Constance, I had a great time being single again. And the reason I think I had so much fun being single after having been in this relationship is because I was living very much my authentic self, and I was starting all these new adventures, and I was just playing, that I was so light and playful that being single to me was maybe one of the most fun windows of time I had, because I could experiment, go to games, go to concerts, go to plays, go to dinner, and I really didn't take any of it so seriously. So I did this very much on a receiving basis. I allowed people to come in and be who they were, and I was myself, but I think I had zero desperation. And because I was because of that, I was like a magnet. I was a guy magnet because I was just me and just there in the moment and with no expectations. And I already had children. I'd already had some success. I wasn't looking for anything. And because my expectations were probably so tempered, and because I was so just happy to be there, it was really fun. I had a great time. However, I also found through this that I was learning a lot, and I did meet one man in particular through online dating, actually, who ended up turning my world upside down. He was He was very attractive. He was very, very good looking. And I was very attracted to him for his looks to begin with. But later on, he was very educated. He had a lot of things I was looking for. But it ended up spinning down a rabbit hole that is probably one of the best stories in the book. So I won't tell you all the details, but it was something else. I put my nurse's uniform on, I zipped it up, put on my sensible shoes and my little nurse's hat, and I went to go and try to save this person every way that I could. And it was just filled with darkness. It was filled with darkness and despair and all the things a relationship is not supposed to be. That's what this relationship was.
So, Dianne, I just love your attitude about relationships and about, how everybody has an individual path and how you learned from those relationships. And now I met your wonderful fiance in Palm Springs, and it sounds like that you have the love of your life now.
Yes, I feel very, very, very fortunate. I was one of the formulas that I used when I was looking for a relationship is that I became very, very clear and specific on what it is that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually crafted a very detailed list, wanting someone, with, some education and someone who would treat me well, someone who could dance. I mean, I've got very specific and very clear. And what was funny about this relationship is that he was the first person I met after, maybe going on 3 or 4 dates a week for almost a year. He was the first person I met where I couldn't bump him off the list. Everything I had on my list, he met my requirements in every way. He's not a great dancer, but he's willing to dance, and that's the important thing. So I just found that we had so many synergies, and our backgrounds. Here's the weird thing, Constance, most people don't know. We ended up going to the same undergraduate school. We ended up both went to Northwestern, both have degrees from Northwestern, and our fathers were both in the same business circle when we were kids. So it was one of those weird synergies where we might have bumped into each other in our past, but we didn't. But it was only because we missed each other by a year or two here or there, or sometimes 6 months. So it was kind of funny when you look back at it, when you meet someone who has a lot of synergy. I think it's oftentimes it's just the timelines are trying to line up.
True. Well, I love that you share that, everything has not been easy for you, that there were lessons that you have to learn. So for people who are listening, who are reinventing themselves or rebooting their lives, how can they deal with sometimes the obstacles or sometimes the disappointments or maybe things not happening as quickly as they would like for them to happen?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think the one key lesson that I learned throughout my entire reboot was that I had to find love for myself first. I had to somehow figure out that I was the cat's meow, that I was worthy, that I was a good person, that I had all this potential and all this excitement and all this enthusiasm, but none of it was coming out at the time because I was in this just horribly stuffed mode, stuffed my face and I stuffed my career and I stuffed my artistic talents. So when I finally started unveiling who I really was to myself, I started liking myself a whole lot. And what I found pretty much very consistently is when you really enjoy your own company, you don't need to have a relationship to fill you up. And strangely, when you don't need to have a relationship, the relationships come running in the door. So I think a lot of it has to do with self. So much of it has to do with self. And one of the best books I've ever read on that is In the Meantime. Fabulous, fabulous book about when you're in between relationships. Yeah, how to take a look at the house. She uses the metaphor of the house. And you get to decide, are you in the basement? Are you on the first floor? Or are you in the attic? Are you ready to launch? And her entire message is about you're all that. You're fabulous. You're wonderful. When you really get that, how cool you are yourself, I think the relationships come effortlessly. And the ones that are not healthy, I believe we have maybe a bit of a fear about being alone. And I think I was terrified to be alone, to make these shifts. But when I decided to make the shift, what I realized is that I actually liked my company the best.
So
and I love having that one day off sometimes. I'm the kind of person who, when I get in a hotel room by myself because I'm traveling, I'm actually doing little happy dances. I love to watch a movie and take a bath and just, I actually enjoy my own company. And because of that, I find that I'm a beacon of light for other people because I'm not looking for anybody to fill me up. And for that reason, I think I've had relationships come effortlessly after I learned some really tough lessons about being so terrified about being alone that I stuck it out to the point where it was dangerous for me, dangerous for my children. It was every aspect of of evil and darkness that you can imagine in life, and I was right in the throes of it. And I still didn't walk away for fear of being alone or for fear of losing this magnificent love, or so I thought. But I think love has a lot to do with, as they say, love is, the relationship is your ultimate lesson. The relationships that you're in are your mirror. So things you don't like, things where you don't have boundaries set, where you're not taking care of yourself, where you're not putting yourself and your needs first in a healthy way, those are the ones I think where people feel, all upset on the inside. They're always unhappy because they really have the rules all backwards. It's about taking, it's the whole oxygen mask thing in the airplane. When you get that on first and you're really healthy about yourself and you have really good boundaries, it's funny, Constance, how the stronger I got with setting my boundaries and the more clear I got with my boundaries, the more respect I got, the more agreement. It's so funny. You say no to someone and they say, you say, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. And the funny thing is they come back and they're like, oh, well, okay, that's fine. What would work for you? Like, well, you know what? Maybe we'll do this in a different way, or maybe we'll do this on my timetable, or maybe I'm just too tired this weekend to do something. And when you get really clear with people, they actually like you better.
So true. And so while you were going through the process of change and reinventing your lives and your life and on those days when people said no to you or what people perceive as rejection, you experienced that. Did you use gratitude? Were you grateful for the lessons that you were learning? What role did gratitude really play in your life? And what would you say to someone who is in the process of reinventing their life?
Well, I would say that I really focused on gratitude. So that is one of my biggest tools. I believe it kind of ties in a little bit with looking for the positive side of every stick, in that I had rejection letters literally coming in every week, and I guess maybe it's just kind of my background is half German, half Irish, so I have the whole never let it get to you. Just keep on going. You will make it kind of thing. So I have a lot of the whole Rocky, kind of the Rocky song always playing in my head as he's running up those stairs. I appreciated the fact that I was willing to put in such a tremendous effort. So even if I got a rejection letter, I said to myself, at least you sent your proposal out. And you should be proud of yourself that you had the opportunity to get a response, because the next response will be the positive response. And I often look at the way that I function as I always go in the window. I don't usually go in the door. I don't know if I know how to go in the door. I always find that there's some little twist or a turn or an angle that I can take where even if someone didn't want to take my book, maybe I could make a phone call, or maybe I could have an in-depth conversation with them about ways in which they felt like it could improve. So I actually made some of those calls and saying, okay, well, if you're not interested, do you have any suggestions for me? Are there things you can do? And I always used gratitude and also relationship building. So I kind of put the two together, appreciated my own energy and effort, but I also tried to look at a way in which I could build a relationship out of it. And I actually ended up creating relationships with some people who didn't actually accept my work. But at the time, it was more about the fact that now we're connected, and maybe in the future that will work out. So I'm very big on never surrender, never retreat. And there always is a way, always. Even if you come in the chimney, if you're passionate about it and it makes you feel good for 5 minutes, if what you did made you feel good for just 5 minutes out of a whole week, then you win. Because I always think back about, okay, something good happens every day, but if I can just focus on those few minutes of, wow, either, I got a nice package in the mail, or someone sent me a thank you note, or my kids came back and said, I got an A on a test, or whatever it is, or whatever wonderful little thing that makes you kind of smile. Those are what I focus on during the week. I try not to focus on the grind, the daily grind, because the daily grind can, we're working hard here. I think all of us are working very, very hard to not only just survive and put food on the table, but then to take a look at ourselves and recraft. And that takes a lot of energy and effort.
It does. And lastly, Dianne, what about someone who says, I'm just too old, or I'm a baby boomer? How can I reinvent myself? What would you like to say to listeners all over the world today?
Well, first of all, I am a baby boomer. I'm at the tail end
So
of the
am I.
baby boom myself. And, all I can say is that I was actually getting my hair cut, about a week ago. And I was sitting there and this beautiful woman came up next to my chair, and she was, the person before me, and she was giving, a nice tip to the lady who cut my hair. And she was probably in her 80s, her early 80s. And my hairdresser turned to me because she knows about the book and she knows about the real brass ring. And she said, do you know that Helen just started playing in a band? She learned how to play drums about 2 years ago at 80. And now she's actually in a band and she is enjoying every minute of it. And I was so thrilled to hear that. And Helen was, of course, ear to ear smiles. And she said, yeah, can you believe I'm playing drums? And I was like, that is so awesome. I really think age is just a number.
For sure.
I really believe that to do what you love to do and to fulfill your purpose is so awesome that it just doesn't matter what age you start. There are no limits. The only limits we have are the ones we put on ourselves.
So awesome. So Dianne, I love your book and I love your presentation and really the message that Spirit has given to you. So how can people get your book? What's next in your life? And share with our listeners your website and your contact information.
Okay. The website is liveyoureverything.com. And it's still new and in development, and we hope to have it grow and expand quite a bit over the next year. But it has resources, product reviews, meditations, music, and also in the future we'll have a lot of tools and things that people can use in their daily life to help them transform. And also on the website, you can link right through the website. The book is called The Real Brass Ring, and it's currently available on Amazon. It's on Kindle. It's in Walmart. It's in pretty much almost every distribution channel, Barnes & Noble. And it is, from what I hear, it's a book that you can't put down once people actually pick it up. It's a fast read, but it's very, very dramatic. And, I guess it kind of resonates with people as almost like a mystery and a soap opera at the same time. So that's kind of, one thing that people might want to consider. And also for the future, I've been so fortunate. I have been booked in I think almost 6 different speaking venues. I'm going to be at Body, Mind, Spirit Expo. I'm going to be doing 2 of those in Chicago. I just got booked at the New Living Expo in New York, and I will be going to Columbus, Ohio in the Universal Light Expo. And in all of those expos so far, I believe I'll be able to offer a workshop. And in those workshops, they're going to be 2 hours, and those are where I have absolutely the most fun, Constance. That's right. My joy is in watching people transform. Even just to see the little light go back on in their eyes and in their smile when they realize there's so many things they still want to do and so many things they love. There's something I call love and inventory, and that's one of our exercises where we sit down and we actually craft everything that we love to do, whether it's from childhood or whether you're in your mid-20s or even just later on in life, and try to develop ways in which we can move towards having all of that part of your regular life. So these workshops will be available, and there will be something that will all be on my website, will be on the calendar in case I'm coming to your town.
You're awesome. What can I say? So grateful that you shared just life-changing information that's really going to radically shift and change the lives of people all over the world. So thank you so much. Well, once again, this is Constance Arnold with the Think, Believe, and Manifest Talk.